So a bit of an unusual video today. If you're hoping to see any car repairs, you might want to stop watching now. I'm not going to show any repairs. But I decided to show this video in the hope that it might help someone that finds themselves in a similar situation to one I found myself in. And this car, it's a relatively old car now. It's about 9 years old, but it's only done around 27,000 miles. I don't really use this particular car that much, but I do of course still have to insure it, tax it and MOT it. And I took it in for an MOT last week, and there were no error lights showing, no warning lights. I don't normally tell the dealer before I take it in, but I do scan all codes. There were no code showing, the engine warning light wasn't on, it was running perfectly. Now there were some things I knew it needed doing, which I'll come back to in a few minutes. But 2 hours after I got the car dropped off, and bear in mind it was only in for an MOT, and it did have a recall on the driver's airbag, which is in here. Sorry for the poor lighting in here. I'm in one of the workshops and there's no real lighting. I've turned the fluorescents off because they cause a lot of flicker, but I hope you can see what we're looking at. But 2 hours after I dropped the car off, I got a phone call from the dealer. It's the main dealer, and they said there was a lot of work needed on the car, which I will go through the list in a few minutes. But also they said the engine warning light was on, and there was a lot of stored error codes, which was odd because there weren't any before I took the car in. So I'm just going to go through what I found and what the outcome was of the findings of the dealer. Now I'm not trying to dump on the dealer here. They do of course have overheads, but I think sometimes they may be a bit overzealous in some of the reporting they feed back to car owners. So just to summarise, the repairs they were quoting were over £7,000. So I just want to go over the response I gave and what I've done about this. So the first thing that they flagged up was it needed new front brakes. Now I knew about that, it did need them, needed new discs and pads, and I would have been quite happy for them to do it. They quoted me, I think it was something like £900, about 500 for the discs and pads and about 400 for labour, and I would have been happy to pay that. It did need them, not because they've worn out, but because it doesn't do many miles, so they tend to corrode. But with the rest of the things that seem to be added on, I declined their kind offer. So as I say, I'll go over the list of things that needed doing in a few minutes, but we'll have a look under the engine bay. That's where most of the work's needed. So first things, as you can see, the brakes have been replaced. All the work I've done myself. As I say, I declined the kind offer of the dealer to do any of the work, and I also didn't pay their £500 inspection fee or diagnostic fee, and nor did I pay for the loan car which they wanted paying for, which in my, if somebody wants me to pay for a car, it's a hire car, not a loan car. And so I paid nothing to the dealer at all for any of the work. They didn't do any of the work, and I said I didn't want them to carry it out. So I brought the car back and had a think and decided to do the work myself. And went through everything, itemised the costs, and I'll now just quickly go over with you what this work entails in case it's going to help any of you that find yourself in a similar situation. So I'll go over the list of things that they flagged up and what they were going to charge and what it's cost me. These prices are in pounds and they're all pre-VAT. So firstly, the brakes, they wanted £490 for the discs and pads and £400 for labour. I got a set of discs and pads, real genuine ones, £170, and of course no labour. Brake fluid and labour for flushing out the braking system. They wanted £62 for the fluid, £48 for labour, and it's cost me just £20 for the fluid. Still have some of this work to do yet. The biggest issue was because of where I live, now and again we get rodents getting into the engine bay. Luckily the cars, it's a BMW, but luckily BMW make a very nice job of kind of sealing the car. That's why it still smells like a new car inside despite being 9 years old. So things can't get inside the car. They can only really get into this area of the car. and now and again we get rodents coming in and they chew through wires. You can probably see over here there are some chewed wires. So there are two main wiring looms in the engine bay. There's the main engine wiring loom, which is where all these connectors and everything, and it goes into this huge junction box over here. See, there's a lot of wires. It goes all around the engine, and you can try repairing the loom, but what I did instead is I decided to replace the loom. Now the dealer wanted I think £500 for the loom and about £700 for replacing it. But they did say if they find anything else, then that would go up, which means it almost certainly would have been higher than that. So I bought a replacement loom, £250, no labour of course, and I'll be fitting that. It's not that difficult to fit. I've done most of the work in getting to this point. You can see I've removed all the covers from the engine. This is normally almost flat, you can't see in here. Normally there's a lot of plastic covers and infills and ducting and pipes that I've taken out. Not a huge job, takes about an hour to do that, to get to this point, and then getting to all the various connections is fairly straightforward. You just need to make sure you put everything back the same, so I take video and plenty of reference photographs. You also need to be careful to get the right loom. There are quite a number of variants. So I've got a replacement loom, a bit cheaper than they were going to quote. There was a leak on the top of the fuel tank, and that's where the return hose from the return of the common rail injection system goes to. If you're not familiar with how these work, there's a kind of return bleed-off line that goes back to the fuel tank. They wanted 410 for parts, 400 for labour, and it turns out it was just a small O-ring on the return hose. It clips on, so you can change that in 2 minutes. It cost me 10 pence for the O-ring. And their diagnostics fee, £480 plus £50 for the hire car, I didn't pay. Oil change, £120 for oil, £70 labour, just cost me £40 for the oil and filter. Springs, they wanted to replace the front suspension springs. Now they do what they call a visual inspection of the vehicle when you get it, and it's kind of irritating. They, for example, said that all four wheels had been curbed. Now none of the wheels on this car have been curbed. There is a bit of corrosion where some of the clear coat has flaked off, but none of the wheels have been curbed, and it's annoying because that information goes into the permanent record of the car. So it looks like you've been abusing the vehicle when you haven't, and it's if they can't tell the difference between a bit of corrosion on the wheels and curbing. In fact, I'll show you the difference. So what we've got is this, and you don't know if you can see it very well. This is not curbing, it's just where a bit of corrosion has got in, because it's up here as well, so it can't be curbing, just needs cleaning off and recoating. So it's not curbed. Same here, it's not curbed, it's just a bit of corrosion on the underside of the clear coat. So it's a bit annoying that they make these silly statements without properly checking what they're talking about. But the background here, but they, as I say, they quoted front springs, and it does not need front springs. I'll show you the corrosion that they quoted as being the cause for needing to replace the front springs. Bear in mind, they were going to charge me £300 for the pair of springs and £500 for the labour to fit it. So let's get a torch we can see under the wheel arch. Okay, so the corrosion they're talking about, I don't know if you can see this very well, is up here. So if you look under here, bits of the paint have peeled off in various places, but I mean even the sticker, the original sticker's still on here. And you probably can't see it. It's very difficult to see, but there's very, very light surface corrosion in a few spots. That's where probably stones hit it and chipped a bit of paint off, but nothing deep, nothing at all to suggest it would need a new spring. So I'm not sure what they're talking about there. They did backtrack on that a little when I questioned it at the dealer, and in fact one of the reasons I decided not to have them do the work is they started getting fairly rude, and the lady manager that was there, the service manager, got fairly rude and abusive when I started asking about some of this and how they justified saying the spring is nearly changing because there was no sign of anything, and she said, yeah, okay, you don't need to get them changed, but we're just saying what we recommend. And I don't really know why they're recommending it. Most of this isn't even rust. It will clean off completely if I clean this bit, you can see it's come up shiny and clean. It's not even corrosion, so not really quite sure what they're talking about there. The next thing was some brake pipes, some steel pipes going to the brakes on the front wheels, and again, they're not really badly corroded. Same sort of thing as the springs. A bit of paint has been chipped off here and there. No real deep or serious corrosion. They wanted £900 to replace them. I can do that in a couple of hours. I've got a brake flaring tool. £60 for the pipe. If you haven't got a flaring tool, it costs you £50 for a cheap one, and that's all you need, not £900. Wipers, they said, needed changing. Don't know why. Wipers are in perfect condition, haven't been used a great deal, and I'll leave them when I'm not using the car, which is quite a lot of the time. I leave them pulled up off the screen, so they're not resting on the screen, and if you leave them resting on the screen they tend to fold over, so I'll leave them pulled up when I'm not using the car. So I don't know why that's even in there. Track rod end, they wanted 370 including labour. Can't find anything wrong with any of the track rod ends. They all seem fairly tight, and it's done 27,000 miles, mostly on motorways, so not sure what they're talking about. So pre-VAT, this comes to £5,960, including VAT. The total was £7,152. Doing everything myself, all the parts come to 610 in total. That's for everything, and that includes the brake pipes, the whole thing, warren loom, everything. And that's 8.5% of what the dealer wanted to charge me. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to have a go at the dealer here. I'm just trying to give maybe some people out there in the same position the idea that there are alternatives. Modern cars are horrendously complicated, and you do need to be careful. When I finish this, it does need to go in for an MOT, of course, so I will be just letting them know what work I've done so they can double check it and make sure that I haven't messed something up. But the probably most complex job is the wiring loom, and that's just, if you watch my channel, you know I dismantle machines all the time, so you treat it the same way. Just take plenty of reference photos, make sure everything's routed in the same way, and it should be fine. The car itself will do a self-check, of course, when you first power it up, and hopefully it will come back to life. There are other things you need doing this sort of thing, of course. You need some basic tools, and a small impact wrench is useful. Some of the nuts and bolts are extremely tight, but it's mostly time and patience, and if you're willing to invest that, then you can do pretty much all this work yourself. You do need things like jacks and the like as well, otherwise you will struggle to get some of the work done. And you do need to jack this car up centrally. It's not a good idea to jack it up on these side jacking points. There is a pad underneath, pretty much underneath the bulkhead at the back of the engine, where you jack it up, and it's best to do that centrally. Okay, well, it's a day later and the jobs are just about done. I've still got to put the covers on. As you can see, this entire engine bay is completely filled in when it's fully reassembled. But I've completely changed the engine wiring loom. Just like I said, I wanted to just avoid the high costs that the dealer was demanding, and also decided to post this video to show that it can be done, and if I can do it, I'm pretty sure most people can do it. It has taken a day to change the wiring loom. It's quite a big job. The top end's not too bad. There are about 35 connectors in total. It's all one big loom. You can see it kind of snaking there into the main junction box there. The only problem with it really is two of the connectors go down underneath the car, and if you've ever looked underneath one of these cars, you know they're completely sealed in, so you have to remove a lot of parts to get to those two connectors, and even then it's a bit of a rigmarole getting the wires out, and then it's even harder getting them back in. So you've got to remove a lot of bits, but if you're willing to invest the time and you've got a few basic tools, then you can see it is perfectly possible. I have tried powering this up and it does come back to life, so that's a good thing. Still got, as I said, quite a lot of trim to put back on yet. Found a few other things that I've put right, bits missing that I'm assuming at some point the repair engineer mechanic had taken out and not put back right. So I've corrected those, saved myself about £7,000 in this process. All the other jobs are done, the fuel leak's fixed, the brakes are done. All the things I mentioned earlier are now fixed. Just a case of bolting some bits back together. A bit of a disclaimer: if you decide to do this to your own car, I take no responsibility whatsoever. So you do need to jack the car up as well, so you need to be aware of how to do that safely. But it's quite an interesting job, really. It is a bit of fun if you like working on cars. I haven't worked on cars for many years, been too busy running my businesses, but it is quite nice now I'm retired to have a bit of a play. They are somewhat more complex than they used to be, but same rules apply. Whatever you take out, put it back the same. Don't break anything that you want to reuse, and in theory, when you put it all back together, it should work fine. I did make a massive mistake with this repair. Did something really stupid, as it turned out. And the car I had before this was an E90. If you're not familiar with BMWs, the E90, it was a saloon diesel 330d, and it's a bit of an odd arrangement. The battery on a BMW is in the boot, and if the battery runs down, because the boot catch, it's not a mechanical release, it's actually a solenoid, and what's on the handle on the boot lid is just a switch. So it tells the computer to open the tailgate when you operate that switch, and assuming the car's unlocked, etc., it will open the boot through a solenoid. The problem is, if the battery runs down, then obviously that doesn't work, you can't open the boot. And because it's a saloon and there's no ski opening on these, there's no opening between the passenger compartment and the inside the boot, there was a mechanical key access alongside the number plate, or just beside the number plate light, and there's a mechanical key inside the key fob, and you could open the boot that way, and I assumed this was the same. So when I disconnected the battery, luckily I only disconnected the earth lead, and anyone from BMW background will say, well, that's important. But then I made a mistake. I closed the boot lid just to keep critters and whatever out. It's out in a workshop here, so I didn't want things getting in there when I wasn't here. Turned out to be a huge mistake, because this car does not have a mechanical release next to the of any sort to open the boot, and there's no warning in the boot to say that's going to happen. If you disconnect the battery, close the boot, you've got a bit of an issue. Now there is, if you want to jumpstart these to make it easier, they've put a positive terminal in here. So this is actually a positive terminal, goes to the battery positive, and so this is where you attach a jumper cable to make it easier, a bit like having the battery in the engine bay, or the battery is obviously all the way back at the rear end of the car. The issue is, of course, what happens if, so that's how I opened it, by the way. I just put a small battery on here, negative to ground, positive to here. The car came back to life after I'd reconnected everything. I didn't want to confuse the car, and then I used the key fob to open the boot. But my question really is, what happens if the solenoid on the boot release fails? There's absolutely no way into the boot. So, interesting one there. Not sure if BMW have really thought that through, and maybe they should have a rethink on that one. But anyway, the main point of this video is don't necessarily think you're being painted into a corner by huge dealer prices. If you want to have a go and you think you've got the ability, then you do what I did and do it myself. So that's the car fully reassembled, all the ducting and covers put back on, everything reconnected. I've taken it out for a test drive, drives perfectly, all the error messages have gone away, and so that's job done. The dealer highlighted a number of repairs that were required, so I've done all those. Done a few extra ones as well that I found were needed along the way, small things, clips and fasteners that needed replacing. And the total cost, when everything's added up for these repairs, came to £419, which is significantly less than the £7,152 plus that the dealer was going to charge to get me to this exact same point. So obviously some of these jobs aren't for the faint-hearted, as I said. Some are quite, not particularly difficult, but it does require removing a lot of parts from the vehicle, and if it's something you're happy doing and spending time doing, then you can save yourself a lot of money. It took me about 3 days to do all the work. Not too bad considering the extent of some of the repairs. And it was also a lot of fun. I quite enjoy working on machines, as most of you probably know. And I haven't worked on cars for a long time. I used to do a lot of work on my own cars, but haven't done that for a long time. So it's quite nice to get back into it. So the point of this video, if you find yourself in the same situation I wasn't really spending the money I was concerned about. It was the amount for what didn't seem to be particularly serious things. Now obviously wiring looms, that sort of thing, you could say they're serious, but it's fairly trivial as far as the actual repair is concerned. It's just a bit intrusive in terms of taking lots of bits off the car. But it's not like dismantling the engine or the gearbox, for example. It's a lot more straightforward than that. But as I say, if you're inclined to have a go, then I would highly recommend it. Now, a waiver here, I'm not responsible if you hurt yourself or destroy your car. I'm just giving you some information as to the approach I decided to take when faced with an astronomical repair bill that I didn't think was really justified, and that proved to be the case. The repairs and what I spent came to just 5.8% of what the dealer was going to charge me, so in other words 17 times less than they were going to charge, which is obviously quite a significant saving. So that's it for this video. Hopefully some of you may have found it useful. Not my usual content. We'll get back onto the repairs in the next video, but I thought I would post this to try and help anyone that finds themselves in the same situation.